Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I want to talk about some stuff with the rankings. I want to talk about that according to Meritocracy, Strickland should be the next person to fight Dricus du Plessis. I'm going to tell you why that should be the case, and I'm going to tell you why it's not going to happen, and why I want to go on a full rant at the end of this video, talking about how Dana White saying that Jon Jones should still be the #1 pound-for-pound top-ranked fighter in the UFC and should have never have been moved. And anybody who puts Jon Jones in anything other than #1 should never be watching the sport and should never do rankings. I'm going to do a nasty little rant near the end of that video, but we need to talk about something with some substance really quick. And that is, who's next for Dricus du Plessis? Let me tell you, there's two scenarios here, okay? There's the meritocracy way that should be going on, and then there's the way that is going to happen. Let's go over the meritocracy one, because that's going to take the least amount of time. Strickland should be after. Strickland should be fighting Dricus du Plessis. Israel Adesanya should be fighting the winner of Khamzat Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker, and the winner of that gets to fight the winner of Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis 2. The only reason that I'm saying that now is because Strickland is ready to go against Dricus du Plessis. Strickland is the #1 guy, coming off a win against Paulo Costa. Israel Adesanya is coming off a loss to Strickland. Here's the thing. I didn't care that Israel Adesanya got a back-to-back title shot after losing to Alex Pereira and then coming back and beating him. But the fact that his very next championship title fight was against Strickland, loses that, and the fact that they wanted to make it so Israel was going to get an immediate rematch, but because Israel said, no, I'm going to take some time off, it's only then that they wanted to do Dricus. And listen, I'm not even disrespecting Dricus here, because I remember, I will never let anybody forget this. Dricus du Plessis, Dana White came out and said that Dricus du Plessis was going to have to fight 2 more contenders to potentially get a title shot. That was after he beat Robert Whittaker. He wanted Dricus du Plessis, I shit you not, to fight Jared Cannonier and potentially Marvin Vettori to get a title shot after Israel Adesanya versus Sean Strickland 2. That was going to happen. The only reason that didn't happen is because the fans got behind Dricus. Because content creators in this space realized what was going on. And the fans of this sport that actually give a shit, mostly you guys, to be frank, got on Twitter and just bullied and threatened to oil up Dana White. That is what happened. We bullied the UFC into allowing Dricus du Plessis to fight Sean Strickland. That is how that fight happened. It was not because the UFC had a change of heart. And now, the UFC is planning to do the exact same thing. Strickland's not going to get a rematch, but Strickland has beaten Paulo Costa in the time that Israel Adesanya has lost to Strickland and has done fuck all up to this point. Israel Adesanya versus Dricus du Plessis is going to be the next thing to happen. This is the real scenario. This is how it's going to play out. Everybody's acting like it's a mystery. It's not a mystery. Let me tell you who is next for the title, who's next after that, and who's potentially coming up after that. Here's the next 3 title fights. I guarantee you. The next guy to fight for the title is going to be Israel Adesanya. Why do I say that? Because Israel Adesanya was already set to fight Dricus du Plessis for UFC 300. They pulled Alex Pereira from UFC 301 up to 300. He was never meant to fight on UFC 300. I am willing to put a stake 100% that is what happened. And who said no? Dricus du Plessis. Because Dricus was talking about how he wanted to take the UFC to Africa, and instead they said, no, we are not able to do that. Hey, how about you do us a favor and go fight in Perth for it? Dricus du Plessis, Israel Adesanya was set to be the main event of UFC 300. That comes from Israel Adesanya talking on the Theo Von podcast. Woo! Yep, Israel Adesanya confirmed on Theo Von podcast he was going to be fighting Dricus du Plessis for UFC 300. That didn't turn out to happen, so they had to go into crazy mode, and they pulled Alex Pereira to fight Jamal Hill at UFC 300 instead of UFC 301. The reason that I know that is because Jamal Hill was set to fight 1 month after that, according to his management team. So they did Jamal Hill, Alex Pereira 1 month earlier because he wasn't fully recovered from a ruptured Achilles. It's going to be one of those videos. So that's how I know that was going to happen. And the UFC, when they're stuck in their ways, they will do it. And we'll talk about that Jon Jones fight at the end of that video. If you think I'm on a legendary rant right now, no. I drank 300 milligrams of some caffeine for that rant specifically. But no, Israel Adesanya will be fighting Dricus du Plessis at Perth, Australia. I'm going to say UFC 305? That's my bet. I think UFC 305 is going to be headlined by Israel Adesanya versus Sean Strickland. Not Sean Strickland. Israel Adesanya versus Dricus du Plessis. Now, the next fight after that, the next person to fight for the title, I am willing to say, is going to be number 10, Khamzat Chimaev. Khamzat Chimaev will be the next dude to fight for the title. How do I know this? Because Dana White has already confirmed that Robert Whittaker versus Khamzat Chimaev is already going to be a number 1 contenders match for the next person to fight for the title. He already knew this. And then after that, he confirmed that Strickland was going to be fighting Paulo Costa. This is going to be the number 1 contenders match. To give you an idea of the amount of privilege that this man has, Kamaru Usman versus Chimaev was an unofficial number 1 contenders match, but they changed it because Chimaev did not have the performance that they wanted to. It's as simple as that. If Chimaev finished a short notice Usman coming off the couch in round 1, they would have made this for the title. I guarantee you. Robert Whittaker is going to be a number 1 contenders match. I'm willing to stake a lot on this. The only way that the winner of this does not fight for the title is if Robert Whittaker wins, because they do not want Robert Whittaker to fight for the title. Not because they dislike him, it's purely because of numbers. Chimaev will fight for the title over Strickland because of numbers, and he's not as controversial, and they want to get into that Saudi Arabian market. It's as simple as that. And then, who's after that? Not Strickland. Strickland's going to have to fight the loser of Israel Adesanya versus Dricus du Plessis. Let me tell you how I think this is going to play out, dude. I believe Israel Adesanya is going to beat Dricus du Plessis. And then his very next fight is going to be Khamzat Chimaev. After the Khamzat Chimaev fight, they're going to have the co-main event of this. On the same card, it is going to be Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis. The winner of that is going to get another title shot against the winner of Israel Adesanya versus Khamzat Chimaev. That is how I think they're going to play it, because they have been teasing Israel Adesanya versus Khamzat Chimaev for a fucking year now, and I think that's how they're going to play it out. Strickland is not number 1 in line, not number 2 in line. He is number 3 in line. The only way that he is going to get a title shot before that is if Khamzat Chimaev loses to Robert Whittaker and they just say, fuck it, Strickland's going to be fighting the winner of Israel Adesanya and Dricus du Plessis. He is not getting the next title shot. That's just how it's going to play. Now, to pad the runtime of this video, I'm just going to spend the rest of it ranting about this bullshit. Dana White has gone out and said that if you put anybody above... You know what? Let's find this fucking video, actually. I sound like I'm in a bad mood. I'm just fired up. I'm not actually in a bad mood, guys. JON. Alright, I think I found the part of the video. So Dana White is going to talk about how Islam Makhachev did really good against Dustin Poirier, but he is not the pound-for-pound number 1 guy. Let's hear the utter glazing of Dana White. The full interview is going to be on the Mac Life MMA. I know people troll them for being a Conor McGregor glazing account, but I kind of like them.
His fight IQ. I'm curious, like, where do you rank him in this pantheon of lightweights that we've seen over the years?
Yeah, I think he's, you know.
The only reason I'm pausing this, remember the question. He is literally just asking him, how do you rank Islam Makhachev in the pantheon of lightweights? Lightweights.
One of the greatest of all time. I think he's incredible. I don't think he's the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world.
Who fucking asked? Nobody asked. Nobody has made a stink about the pound-for-pound rankings ever since Jon Jones goes on Twitter every once in a while. How could Islam Makhachev be pound-for-pound number 1 when I submitted Cyril Gane? Cyril Gane got out-wrestled by a motherfucker who never wrestled a day in his life until he was over 25 years old, that being Francis Ngannou. People cope about that to this day. Cyril Gane is a Frenchman who cannot wrestle. He cannot wrestle. He is a heavyweight striker.
Anybody to call Islam the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world when Jon Jones is still fucking fighting is nuts and shouldn't be ranking in the pound-for-pound.
I am 100% crazy. I agree with Dana White on there. Islam Makhachev is so clearly has a better case to be the pound-for-pound number 1 guy over Jon Jones. I will stake my reputation on it. Name one argument outside of naming shit that he did more than 5 years ago. Could you say that Jon Jones is the number 1 guy? Oh, well, he beat Dominic Reyes. Dominic Reyes got his fucking ass beat by every other generation of light heavyweight that came up. Y'all were freaking out when Carlos Ulberg was calling out Dominic Reyes because you thought he was going to send him to the fucking morgue. Dominic Reyes When people talk about, like, well, Jon Jones never actually lost a fight. In my mind, Jon Jones lost to Dominic Reyes. There's absolutely... Dominic Reyes versus Jon Jones is one of the most egregious robberies I've ever seen in the sport. It is one of the craziest things. Also, MMA Guru has gotten to the point that he thinks that Jon Jones must have dirt on Dana White. I don't think it's that far. I think Dana White is so stubborn. And I think it's because he realizes that nobody wants to buy Jon Jones fighting a geriatric Stipe Miocic. And he's so salty that his fight promotion for that has completely and utterly fallen flat and has been ruined by Tom Aspinall and the entirety of the fan base that he really doesn't have control over anymore, because all of the mainstream corporate MMA media can't fucking outperform Lucas Tracy, dude. Like, think about that. Think about that. Dana White made a video trolling Lucas Tracy and a bunch of other MMA content creators because their criticism of UFC 300 was getting more views than ESPN MMA. Most content creators on here that dedicate themselves to being corporate media struggle to keep up with most independent content creators in the space. I have no clue why Dana White doesn't like that, because to me that's the ultimate free speech right there. Like, you cannot like them. What? Like, I think he's salty at the sheer amount of people that have woken up to the idea that Jon Jones is not the number one guy anymore.
Doing any of the fucking rankings ever, if that's what you really think. Jon Jones has never lost a fight ever. He's fought all the
Still a 1 on the record, though.
baddest dudes in the world. And then when you think about what pound for pound rankings really mean, he moved it up to heavyweight and destroyed the best guy in the world.
He beat Cyril Gahn. A guy that can't fucking grapple. You want to talk about pound for pound? Lightweight is infinitely better than heavyweight has ever been. There has never been a case where heavyweight has been better than lightweight. I would argue the BJ Penn era was better than the Brock Lesnar era. Brock Lesnar never... What are we talking about right now? Lightweight is infinitely better than heavyweight. I can't believe... Like, understand how crazy this is. You can make a better case that Alex Pereira is the pound-for-pound best dude in the UFC over Islam Makhachev than you can do Jon Jones over Islam. Jon Jones submitted Cyril Gahn, who lost to Francis. I understand that Dana White is salty, that he's still trying to get people to forget Francis Ngannou, and that this entire thing has kind of like taken a nosedive because they realize that people consider Tom Aspinall the real champion. They don't want to do Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones because they're worried that Tom Aspinall will win and ruin their whole fucking kerfluffle. It doesn't help that Jon Jones is one of the most insufferable motherfuckers on Twitter right now. Like, I wouldn't even care as much if Jon Jones wasn't constantly chirping like, how dare you think you're better than me? Why are you trolling me? Like, bro, just shut the fuck up. Like, legitimately, dude, if Jon Jones just was quiet and like, hey guys, I'm injured, I'm not going to be able to fight, I'm just going to be chilling out with my family that I'm not abusing at all. I'm going to be hanging out with them, and I'm not going to be really on Twitter, constantly engaging with all of the trolls, and I'm definitely not going to threaten to dox them, and I'm definitely not going to be praising Jesus, and then the very next moment, I'm going to be flashing my wealth. I wonder if the Bible ever said anything about rich people getting into heaven. I wonder if there's like a really well-known quote about that, yeah, I think people should be bringing up whenever Jon Jones wants to flash his money around. Yeah, maybe if you didn't do that and make yourself as unlikable as possible, we wouldn't care if you were sitting out. If you want to make the case that Jon Jones, when he beat Stipe Miocic, should be above Islam, then we can have that argument. But to say that Jon Jones, after sitting out for this long, should still be above Islam. Islam Makhachev, to give this an idea for you, Islam Makhachev, in the time that Jon Jones beat Cyril Gahn up till now, because that was the last time that he fought, Islam Makhachev beat Alexander Volkanovski again, and then beat Dustin Poirier. Understand this. If you don't like Islam Makhachev, you don't like Islam Makhachev. This is coming from a dude, you call me a Dagestani hater. I'm going to end it off with this rant right here. Okay, I'm going to turn off the recording. Okay? You and me, we're ending off with this rant. Islam Makhachev won the title against Charles Oliveira, who at the time was number 7 pound for pound in the world. That alone gets you into the pound for pound rankings. I understand why you don't put him above Jon Jones yet. And then, And then Islam Makhachev is set to fight Alexander Volkanovski, the pound-for-pound #1 dude in the world. Pound-for-pound #1 versus pound-for-pound #2. It was agreed on before that fight that whoever won was going to be the pound-for-pound #1 guy. That is why that fight happened. That was the whole promotion behind that fight. Islam Makhachev won. I believe Volkanovski won. If Islam Makhachev was ruled the winner, it was a close enough fight, I don't care. Islam Makhachev from then on should be ruled as the #1 best fighter in the UFC. It should not even be a discussion after that. But no, they played this game that Volkanovski was still the #1 fighter. Whatever. Keep this going. And then Jon Jones comes out of fucking nowhere, fights Cyril Gane, and gets a finish, and is then teleported to the top of the pound-for-pound rankings. Okay? Just teleported up there. Jon Jones #1, Volkanovski #2, Islam #3. Leon Edwards is #4, I believe, at this time. And then they set Jon Jones, Stipe Miocic, the retirement fight. It was always a retirement fight. That is what they're planning on doing still. Boom, falls out. Oh, Volkanovski is going to be fighting Islam Makhachev. Oh, no. Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev. Boom, that falls out. Volkanovski versus Islam Makhachev again. Volkanovski loses. Oh, okay. Islam Makhachev is now the pound-for-pound #1 guy. And there is some weird headline drama over Islam believes that he should have been over Jon Jones, and Jon Jones is talking shit. I was still on Islam Makhachev's side. I'm sorry, that's just how it's going to be. And then, while still Jon Jones is out, you have Tom Aspinall hurting the legacy of Jon Jones by defending a title, by winning an interim, by wanting to defend a title. And then, after that, Islam Makhachev is able to successfully defend a title up till now against Dustin Poirier. Jon Jones still doesn't have a confirmed date back for Stipe Miocic, and he still wants to throw a fucking hissy fit over not being the #1 in the pound-for-pound rankings. In my mind, you should have been in #3. You should have never been put in #1. I'll double down on that. Jon Jones you don't get a #1 pound-for-pound ranking off of beating somebody who wasn't even in the top 15 of pound-for-pound. The only other heavyweight that is in the pound-for-pound rankings is Tom Aspinall. Mysteriously, the only guy that you don't want to fight. If Jon Jones wants to be the pound-for-pound #1 guy in the world again, Jon Jones has to beat Tom Aspinall. The reason why? Tom Aspinall is the only other heavyweight that's ranked. Everybody else, I don't give a shit that you're fighting a geriatric Stipe. That means as much to me as fighting at this point Sergey Spivak. Islam Makhachev is #1 based off the amount of work that he's been able to do recently. Pulling up this bullshit that, oh, well, he did this back in the day. Nobody cares. Like, you're not going to talk about Dominic Reyes? If you're not going to bring up the Dominic Reyes fight, then fine. You can't bring up the Gustafsson fight. Gustafsson is also on a fucking losing streak. Oh, wait, we're not going to bring up the Thiago Santos fight? Okay, you don't get to bring up the Daniel Cormier. You don't get to bring up the Glover Teixeira. If you're not going to bring up the fights that are more fucking recent, then you can't bring up the fights that happened in his fucking heyday when he was juicing on gills. Woo! But there you go. I'll double down. Jon Jones should have never been the #1. He should have been #2 off of Cyril Gane at best. But there you go. That's my little rant. Thank you, everybody who wants to listen to me scream about MMA. And if you like this type of content, please consider a like, comment, subscribe. It means the absolute most to me, and I will see you all next time. Adios.